Performing us. Don't have your hopes too high that it will run smoothly because we started already a little bit late and there's several reasons for that. But anyway, welcome to everyone. What we start with is a karakia, and I've asked Mark Clues from Hastings District Council to lead us in that. Mark, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll do whakataka te hau, which I understand is one that's used quite frequently here at the Hawke's Bay Regional Council. Quite appropriate this morning with the touch of frost that we've had. Yes. The snow on the mountains. So, whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tanga, kia mā kina kina ki ta, kia patarara ki tai. Hi ake ana te atakura, hei tio, hei huka, hei huhu, te he, mauri ora.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Okay, for those who don't know, my name is Ravi. I'm the chair of the Joint Committee, and I'm we'll try to steer you through the meeting today. There are some apologies, and they are Charles Lambert and Evelyn Ratima. Evelyn Ratima and Evelyn and Gilvery Mohi are two new members that will be joining us. They're unfortunately not here today. We have only had one of the apologies. We're still also waiting for Tanya Hopman to join us online, which we haven't heard from. Are there any notices that we need to be aware of? No. Okay, housekeeping is on the back of this page, and I'll just quickly run through that. This meeting is being live streamed on Council's Facebook page and will record for viewing at a later date on our YouTube channel. In an earthquake, drop, cover and hold if the shaking is long or strong, and we'll ask our engineer to decide whether it actually is long and strong, whether we should go for a run or whether we stay. So thank you for taking up that duty, Chris. That's really good. When the shaking subdues, leave the building through the nearest exit and proceed immediately towards Napier Hill along Dalton Street to Tiffin Park, continuing up the steps to Cameron Road. Since it's Napier, I will ask the Napier City Councillors to lead us in that, since I wouldn't know where to go, being from Twyford. Evacuation. If an emergency alarm sounds, immediately evacuate the building through the nearest exit and proceed to the assembly area on the grass at the corner of Dalton and Vulture Street. So exit point is there, and the grass area is by the big trees in front of the building. Toilets are located down the hall to the left of the chamber, which is in the end of this building, end of these chambers. Okay. So now we've got all the important stuff done. We'll carry on with our meeting. Are there any conflict of interest declarations? Anyone reading through the papers may be conflicted. If not, it's great. Then we'll start with our first item, which is actually item number 3, Clifton to Tangoio Coastal Hazard Strategy, JC Terms of Reference. Who's leading that, Chris?
So Simon will take us through the key points and then take it from there.
Thank you. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a chance to look at the terms of reference for this committee and to check for any updates for the new triennium. Just to note, really in terms of the attachment and where the changes are proposed, you'll see there are some text in red and some text in blue. So just to clarify what that is, the blue text is proposed changes by tag for this new triennium to refresh it and focus it on the current task.
Can you stop you there? So yes. For those uninitiated, whatever it is, in the gallery, tag means Technical Advisory Group. So those are the technical staff that support us as a joint committee.
Thank you, Chair.
We use a lot of acronyms, and I'm trying to sort of explain that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then those in red have actually already been adopted by the Partner Council. So those are largely in relation to the Hawke's Bay Regional Council's request that it appoint the chair for this joint committee to reflect its role going forward as a lead agency for the strategy. So what's in front of you here is proposed changes. If this committee agrees to them, they'll be taken back to each Partner Council for final adoption. So with that introduction, Chair, have you taken any questions about the changes or paper more broadly?
Okay, are there any questions? If not, then we could carry on and go directly to the recommendations. So you've read the paper, you know what is included in the recommendation. If anyone would like to move that, and I'll take Hayley as a seconder. Any discussion on that, on the recommendation, either from Councillor Redstone or Councillor Brown?
Just seems like most of the changes are due to the new regime adopting. So, yeah,
Lead
very
agent.
comfortable, yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. It's rather painless. It was easy. Made long continue. Okay, then we go to number 4, appointment of Clifton to Tangoio Coastal Hazard Strategy JC members. Who can I pass that on to?
So thanks, Chair. I'm happy to talk to that. So this is really a simple paper formally appointing all of the representatives to the committee. We have our representatives of our PSGEs, Mangahararu Tangatu, Mana Arhuri and Hiratunga Tamatea, and each of the 3 councils. So they're all set out in the paper. I won't read through all the names individually, but it's really just process to accept that membership and move on from there, Chair.
It's fairly straightforward as well. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Mover, Councillor Price and Councillor Simpson.
So it should be the councils.
Oh, okay. We'll take Councillor Corbyn. Yeah, we don't want Nathan City to rule the roost to do now. Fair enough. Thank you very much for pointing that out. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Have it. The ayes have it. Okay, then we go to the following paper. We're flying here, guys. We're out here in no time, maybe. Election, item number 5, election of deputy chairs. Chair. Okay. Can I give that to you again?
Well, I'll just outline the process. So this is around determining deputy chairs or chair or chairs. So the process is that the chair of the joint committee will call for nominations. That's the first part of the process. So we'll see how many nominations we get. If there are more than 2 nominees, we will carry out a vote, and the 2 nominees with the most votes will be declared elected. So that's effectively a simple process you need to run, Chair. First call for nominees, and if we have more than 2 nominees, we'll have a voting system.
This also shouldn't take too long.
Can I just confirm, is it one from each council ideally, deputy chair?
It's what we have done in the past. We could have run 1 deputy, but in the past we actually have had 1 from each council, which makes a lot of sense and has worked well in the past. So I would favour as a chair that we continue that process has worked as well, served as well thus far.
I would too, and I'd like to nominate Councillor Owen Corbyn.
Okay, got a nomination, and
I'll second that, and I'd like to nominate Councillor Hayley Brown.
you will second that? Okay.
Well,
Very straightforward, isn't it?
Can I just make a comment that it would be like, where would Mana Whenua sit in at potentially being a deputy chair if that was, how do I say it? It would be quite good if it was still an option rather than actually putting it in the terms of reference that it has to be one or the other. And I note that our terms of reference does leave that open.
Leave it open, that's right. I would suspect, and I'm just being hypothetical here, that if they would have wanted to be part of leadership, as in being in the deputy chair, they possibly may either have written to me or actually be here present. So I don't think this is a really important issue for them so far. So I would say we can always change during the training if we needed to, with the agreement of all the members of the joint committee. So therefore, I would say we will appoint now. We've got 2 nominations. Unless there are other nominations, then that's what it will be. No other nominations? Okay, then it's actually, we've got seconder and a mover, so that we appoint Councillor Corbyn and Councillor Brown as the deputies of the joint committee. Don't be too worried, guys, because it doesn't take a lot of work.
Excuse me, Chair, I just think technically we might need a mover and a seconder
Yes.
for those, so I'm happy to move recommendations 1 through 6.
Okay, and then I've got Councillor Dixon has seconded it. You moved it, seconded it. Good, thank you very much for that.
Mr. Chair, we've actually got 3 members from Hastings HDC here. It's okay. You're just thinking aloud. Yeah, that's cool.
Oh, they always push their way around.
Just
You gotta-
thinking about the numbers.
No,
That's cool.
I'm glad that you keep an eye on them, you know, it's all, both those councils. It's all good.
And so, Chair, just get one order, maybe we probably should officially vote on that.
Yeah, I'm getting to that. Would you like to chair? You can if you want to. I don't have a
There's
problem.
a couple of able deputies that have been suggested.
Okay, very good. Councillor Corbyn, would you like to speak on yourself, on the position?
Well, thank you for the nomination, and I look forward to supporting you, Chair, over the next triennium. There's been a lot of progress made with the strategy, and I look forward to keeping it moving along. It's an important issue for our community, and we need to actually start to get some action on it.
Right.
So I look forward to progressing that.
Thank you. Councillor Brown?
Tēnā koutou katoa ko tēnei tuku pipiha. No mori hoku oku tipuna I whānau mai I Waihopai. Te tupu ahau I raro I te pai maunga o Takatimu. I te tipu ahau I te taha o te awa o Oreti. Ko Young, Rāua kau ko Lindsay. Oku ingoa whānau ko Hayley Brown toku ingoa. Kei Ahiriri ahau I noho ana. Kia ora everybody. For the member of the public, my name is Hayley Brown, and as I said, I grew up in Southland. I'm a fifth generation tangata Tiriti in a family that's been almost exclusively farmers, tradesmen and professional homemakers. Before becoming a politician, I had a career in engineering across a variety of fields. This is my second term as a Napier City Councillor, and I really enjoyed being on this committee last term. My passion is complex decision making, and this topic definitely fits that bill. I've loved learning about the work done to date, and I've found it really satisfying to get that resolution across the line that will be vesting this work with HBRC and our support. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to being the Deputy Chair, and nō reira rā I hoa mā, kia ora rā koutou katoa.
Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Just a quick question. If you are not going to be attending the meeting, who will chair the meeting out of your 2 deputies?
Out of those 2?
Yeah, do you do that?
For instance, if I would not be attending, I actually would contact both deputies, and then whoever feels most appropriate at the time, topic on the agenda, we would then decide who would be the chair.
Thank you.
Councillor Corbyn and Councillor Brown, you happy with that approach? Good, thank you. Good question, by the way. Okay, any further comments, discussions, questions? All in favour of those 2 nominations, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Ayes have it. Welcome. Great. Complex decisions, all right? The next 3 years are not going to be that straightforward. But anyway, we're up for it. Thank you very much for putting yourself forward, and thanks for those who got confidence in them. Okay, then we move to timing for the strategy notification, which is a big topic, and we actually spent a little bit of time on that. So, Chris or Simon?
Yeah, so look, I'll just talk through the key points, and then I think we can have a bit of a discussion. But obviously we're all set to do a major consultation with the community in August around the specifics of precisely what would the strategy be, what were the options, and more importantly, a framework for how the strategy would be funded, right down to the detail of some example rate demands in different sorts of locations about how the proposal would be funded by ratepayers. So it's a real watershed moment in terms of the strategy. It's about moving it forward into the long-term plan of the Hawke's Bay Regional Council, and will enable key decisions to be made around exactly what the strategy is and how it will be funded, and exactly when elements of it may be executed. With the natural disaster that was Cyclone Gabriel, a lot has changed for a lot of organisations, and we're highlighting in terms of the Clifton Tangoio strategy and the resourcing of our team, the cyclone has had a major impact. And that's because there's a huge amount of work to turn, the high-level estimates for each of the cell interventions into the detailed financial modelling for what is the public-private split, are there multiple rating zones in an area of benefit, what's the affordability test, and a whole raft of other analysis. And at the moment, our finance team, which is already larger than it was before the cyclone, is dealing with significant recovery or response and recovery activity from the Hawke's Bay Regional Council itself around our flood control infrastructure and drainage schemes. The Regional Council is also the administrating authority for the Civil Defence team, and once again going through massive volumes of financial matters and claims, etc. Also providing support to the recovery agency, and on top of that, also the administrating authority for a whole lot of government funding in terms of silt and waste and the silt task force. So there's an enormity of work that was simply not foreseen when we put the schedule together, and unfortunately that has meant that we are unable to meet that August deadline, which we're not particularly happy about as a TAG team, because we're very excited to see this project moving forward, but it is physically impossible to do the work that is required. And we do need to do that work to a very high standard, because it does go through an audit process and all of that sort of stuff. So we have put in the paper a few options, and we've been working with our corporate planning team, who's Desiree is also here to potentially answer some questions. There she is. But look, a number of options. One is we align it with our long-term plan, so we'll be consulting in March for our long-term plan. Some of the consideration around that is we initially, as a TAG, recommended to separate the consultations between a normal LTP and a significant issue like our coastal strategy, so it could be really clear with everyone what we were consulting on, and it didn't get mixed up with a raft of other changes. And it's quite likely that this LTP will have a significant number of items to consult on as we respond to Cyclone Gabriel. There might be a number of matters that may or may not change. So it could be a busy environment is all I'm highlighting. And that could be possible for all of the councils in Hawke's Bay who've had significant impacts through the cyclone. The other one, the second option, is that we effectively continue the standalone consultation, but we effectively push it out a year. So we target next August and prepare for that consultation and undertake a consultation then. And the third is that we do it in an annual plan alignment in 2025, which is the longest delay of all the options. Where we have landed as a TAG is in that recommendation where we believe that deferring that activity by 12 months and being realistic about our capacity to resource that activity is probably the best place to land. But we're certainly keen to just work through the issue with the Joint Committee. This decision, of course, would be a recommendation to the Hawke's Bay Regional Council, because ultimately it's the Regional Council's decision on how it would consult. on its LTP and other consultations. So with that, Chair, I think happy to open it up to discussion or comments. Take it from there.
Okay, excellent. Are there any questions? Councillor Redstone.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question, and it's about the at-risk communities at present. So, for instance, Te Awanga, Hastings would normally just get on and do something about that. That's still available as an option under the option 2?
Absolutely. So the status quo effectively remains, and decisions can be made by our partner councils. And of course, we are working on that sort of interim works policy and understand how they may occur. So this making a recommendation for option 2 would not mean that nothing can be done in the interim. Certainly, we're all interested in protecting our communities in the interim.
May I add to that? We've got a memorandum of understanding between the TAs and Hawkesbury Regional Council. However, if you would, for instance, Hawkesbury Regional Council would be so good to build a large asset somewhere in this space, Hawkesbury Regional Council will have some oversight over that to make sure that actually it's fit for purpose, and it will be, because otherwise we could take on the liability. But absolutely, memorandum of understanding allows that to happen, that maintenance or whatever needs to happen will continue to happen. So you got an insurance. Councillor Price?
No, I was just agreeing with what you said.
Councillor Simpson?
Yeah, through you, Chair, the question in my mind would be a 12-month delay might seem significant to many residents. My question would be looking, and Chris, you certainly have a far more detailed knowledge of the strategic work program than I will ever have, but the question I have is there opportunities over the next 12 months to look at the long-term plan and keep it at the same length of time, but increase the number of activities to shorten the program?
Yeah, so that's in terms of the execution of any plan. So probably what I didn't point out in my opening remarks is that this doesn't mean that the project stops for 12 months. It simply means that that particular work stream would slow down. All of the other work around Whanaunga Māori, preparing for consents, our environmental work, they would all continue, and certainly we can certainly look. I guess we can certainly look, because it's linked into those triggers. We certainly look at where the triggers are, is maximising front-ending that work program if that's the best option. So I think we can take it into account, but then ultimately those decisions lie with the regional council for affordability around, probably not creating really lumpy work, having a consistent work program that's efficient and effective, but certainly take those comments on board, councillor.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate at this time when natural hazards are at a heightened awareness that we're effectively delaying a discussion which could be quite pertinent in the current context.
Definitely from an involvement from the community in this process. And one pillar that you actually didn't mention is also the funding model, and that's going to be very important, because that will give people an indication of where they actually fit within the whole this complex question, and we'll continue to work on that, which is most important, because that's where a lot of members of the public are waiting for what actually this will actually bring to them as a bottom line, but also from the Hawkesbury Regional Council as well. Since we're taking this work on, it's going to be something that needs to be funded, and where that comes from will determine of what level we will get involved and what speed we can travel as well. Okay. Any other? You've got a Sahani?
Thank you, Chris. And I agree, option 2 looks like a good middle ground, I suppose. Can you just talk us through how you landed at 12 months versus 10 or 9 or 14?
Look, I don't think there's any science in exactly 12 months, whether it's 11 or 13. What we're indicating, I guess the key distinguishing points is accelerating the work and combining it with the LTP we felt was problematic, in that was the amount of work and combining it with a raft of other consultation topics and the complexity that it's a coastal strategy across multiple jurisdictions, and all of our previous discussions with the Joint Committee, we really sought to have some standalone consultation because we felt we get the best opportunity to consult deeply through that process. It's really saying, about a year, so it could be slightly less. Desiree could probably chip in here because she's probably got more knowledge around the local government processes, because it's also fitting it in the calendar of all the consultations and other activities that we do as well.
Tēnā koutou katoa. I'll just concur with that. It's not, it's roughly 12 months. It could be September, October, but any later than that, you're pushing into the sort of Christmas break. So it's sort of that sweet spot between after the adoption of the RTP and the end of the year.
Councillor Corbyn?
Yeah, I'm in favour of option 2, but my question is, if we look at table 1 and the proposed timeline for August 2023, those steps were pretty tight to get there. And Chris has mentioned about not having a lumpy process. What I'd like to see is that timeline for those steps reviewed.
Right.
And so we know what's happening when, rather than leaving it all to the end.
Yep. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, thanks to the chair. I think table 1 was the point in time from pre-cyclone. That was our plan. And I guess pending advice from Joint Committee on which option to pursue, I'd expect that we would need to prepare a new project plan to meet that new timeframe. So I suggest at our next meeting, we should bring back to you what the plan is to meet that August 2023 date, if that's what you decide to land on today.
Thank you. Welcome, Tanya Hopman. Hopefully you can hear us, and you obviously can. We're at item 6. We're discussing the timing for strategy notification. Okay, are there any questions? Yeah, Councillor Honey?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair, just a couple of things for Chris. And it's around the funding envelope and whether, and in the context of our cyclone recovery response. So, first question is there, just seeking clarification, has there been any application to central government for projects as part of a regional recovery that would fund any of this activity?
So no. The funding that we've put forward for support or partnership with government has been around primarily flood and drainage assets, new assets such as Wairoa, where there's no comprehensive flood control scheme. We've asked for funding for that. Part of the issue is the regional council's currently not accountable or responsible solely for that domain, and the current status quo is effectively in the coastal environment, the asset owner is the person who's primarily responsible for protecting an asset if that's what they wish to do. So far we haven't, and that's because we've been focused on putting back existing infrastructure and certainly building back better or smarter with some of that infrastructure without expanding out into areas where we haven't quite got to the point of being the primary entity.
Thank you. Look, and that's the answer that I expected, but more comprehensive because you were good at that. But I thought it was useful to clarify that, but also, and it leads on to my next point, that there's a risk, and I'm interested in your thoughts about how big that risk is, that in all the work that goes in to our recovery response and the scrutiny and the pressure that our collective balance sheets are put under and we know that there's going to be a high level of scrutiny into our ability to carry the maximum amount of debt possible locally as opposed to from central government, there's a risk if we don't at least create a funding envelope now, if that were possible, that we find down the track that we have no capacity to fund what we intend. So I'm interested in that risk, but also in whether we have an ability to create a funding envelope within that we can consult on.
So that risk is fully understood by this organisation. One of the pieces of work we have on our books is to understand exactly what our balance sheet is in terms of that debt ceiling. What are the demands on available funds to actually create a position to understand, how much can we fund? And I think it's quite smart to create a space for coastal in that, and certainly that's been part of my discussions with Susie is about understanding. We know the high level costs of some of this infrastructure. We can put a provision in, and then we can understand, what are the financial matters around funding that, plus a raft of other things. And we haven't got the detail of that yet, but it's certainly been thought about by the executive team.
Thank you.
And by the way, just for everybody's information, Susie is?
Our GM Corporate Services overseeing all of our finances.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, my question was probably simple. It's similar. It's that simple overhang around the long-term plan process, and then later, being a Johnny-come-later, trying to get money into a long-term plan. So I'd certainly be mindful of the fact that, I think the consultation with the public is more around the priorities and the scale that needs to be implemented later. But we already know there's going to be a funding consequence when you go into the long-term plan process. So likewise, I believe there's a need for that funding envelope within your long-term plan process, which we can then use the public consultation later to define how that looks over time, which then may alter your annual planning processes if that's,
I think that's smart, and potentially there's a way to weave that into the recommendation from the joint committee that you'd like to see something like a provision at least talked about in terms of the LTP workings, so that we don't get to a position where, because of cyclone recovery, for instance, there's limited capacity. So at least those discussions are occurring with councillors in the lead in to the LTP.
Yeah, but I think it's, so I'd be angling at within your long-term plan, identifying the hazard and mitigation works across all hazards that you're addressing, which would include the coastal hazard as a provision of funding for the long-term plan. And then I think it's natural that we need a little bit of time. Everybody's distracted at the moment and will be for some time, particularly those in the rural and coastal environments that have been impacted by Gabriel. So I think that's when they will then have the breathing space to say, right, now let's focus on the priorities and the scale of interventions along the coastline.
Okay, excellent. Good points. Are there any others? Just a minor question. The cost of option 1, 2 and 3, have you roughly worked that out?
In terms of the cost of the consultation process.
Yeah.
So it might defer to Desiree. Obviously, the cost of preparing all the information will be similar, but it's simply the consultation.
No, we haven't costed it yet. It will depend on the type of consultation we do, but it's probably insignificant in terms of the broader project. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars rather than hundreds.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. Okay, good. Well, on that note, if there's no other further discussion, then we should move to the recommendations. And I've already heard from a couple of you your preference. So the recommendations are here in front of us. Would anyone like to move? Councillor Redstone.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move. I'd like to comment that I don't like the delay, but I can say it's a necessary delay, and I do like the more robust situation of the consultation. So in that case, that's why I'm happy to move.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Harding? Okay. Any discussion on the recommendation that we've here before us? Councillor Brown?
Just on that last point, did we want to include a recommendation around inclusion of provisional funding in HBRC's long-term plan?
Councillor Harding?
Yeah, I would like to move an amendment to the recommendation, new item 4, which I'm just drafting here at the moment.
Are you busy with?
Yep.
Okay.
So recommends that Hawke's Bay Regional Council gives consideration to incorporating an LTP funding envelope for, what are we going to call it, for the coastal hazard strategy.
Councillor Redstone, would you support that addition to your initial move? Once you've got that, Peter?
Yeah, I've got that. Yep.
Could you read it
Try to
out
keep
again,
it simple.
just for clarity, so we all know what we're voting on?
The Hawke's Bay Regional Council gives consideration to developing a funding envelope for the Clifton to Tangoio strategy.
An LTP funding.
An LTP, long-term plan.
Sorry.
It's another acronym that you all keep using.
Okay. Yep, we put that in the right place there, sir.
Okay,
That's,
wonderful.
that's point 3 of that recommendation, that we added as point 3.
1.4.
Point 4. Excellent. Okay, any discussion on that?
Through you, Chair, does that fourth point need to include to be informed by a separate consultation process? Or is that generic enough to cover how that vote would be informed?
I can comment on that. Chris? So effectively what we're doing is we can't consult prior to the LTP.
Yep.
We do know roughly what the costs will be, and many of those costs will be funded in capital. So they will effectively need to be funded by the Regional Council upfront, irrespective of what that rating model is. So all we're doing is, given that we know the high level costs, making provision for those capital costs in the envelope in our LTP considerations to protect a position, or at least go into the LTP in a known position around any impact on funding on LTP may or may not have a consequence for coastal. So it's really not forgetting about it, having it really right in front of councillors so that they can make the best decisions with all of the information.
No, I'm happy with it.
Okay. Desiree was busy typing away. Hopefully you were listening to our discussion. Is that from our local government perspective possible?
Yep.
That we do that?
Absolutely.
Without consultation?
Yeah. So I think when the Regional Council, this is in practice, they'll get all the bids for new work for the LTP. We'll just have to have a sort of a placeholder for the coastal hazards implementation, and that won't be spent on something else. You won't see it in our consultation document, but it's just providing the space for it. So I think that's very doable.
Right, excellent. So we've got it all ticked off. That's really good. Okay, any further discussion, questions? If not, I would like to put to you recommendations 1 to 4. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. And we've even got the wall going in favour as well. So thank you very much, Tanya. Sometimes you get forgotten, but I'll try to keep you there. Mind you, you're the only one on there. Very, very big screen. So make sure where your hands go on your face, okay? Yeah. Fantastic. Okay. We'll go to item 7, which is now we're into the information section of our meeting. And that's overview of the Clifton to Tangoio Coastal Hazards Strategy. Is that you again, Chris?
So it's Simon. So I'll hand over to Simon to take you through that. But very, very much, it's a bit of a history of the strategy to date for the record. But Simon will talk to it and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chair. That's pretty much what I was going to say. So really it's just a companion to our workshop this morning, just a record of what's been done in the past in terms of the strategy development process so far. It's there for reference in future, and for today, if any questions, I'm happy to go to those now, but don't intend to take you through an exhaustive detail right now.
You're playing golf this afternoon. Okay. You've all read the paper. Any questions, any comments? quite a document. This is about what we actually been working at with the community. And we, prior to the joint committee, we actually had a workshop where Simon ably reminded us that the strategy itself is actually not a joint committee strategy developed. It actually is developed with the community, which I think is actually a very important issue to understand, that this actually is a strategy, albeit still in draft, actually was done through our panels, which Simon led very ably, and we come actually up with a very extensive draft strategy, which we all have got in front of us, and I normally lug it around in my briefcase. It actually is quite a heavy piece of paper. So there we are. Any other questions, comments? None?
I guess I've got a comment, because it comes up frequently and it's useful background for councillors. Often in public environments, such as some of our walk-in sessions that we've had recently, some people new to the subject matter sort of say, well, why didn't you think of this option or that option? And I think what's contained in that document is, in fact, there was a long list of like 30 options looked at for every location. That was whittled down to sort of the top 6, which then were looked at in great detail in terms of cultural impacts, environmental impacts, costs, operating costs, and so there's a huge, there's 2 years of analysis behind coming up with those recommended pathways, and I think often that can be forgotten, or it's interpreted that the council has come up with this plan, and it's just a reminder that we had that intensive 2 years, very long list of options, great detail analysis of the top 6 or so, which finalised in those recommended pathways. So I just wanted to point out that there's, as you said, a lot of robustness behind that, and often we can sort of forget a few years on from that process.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Gordon?
Yeah, I'm looking at current work 41 and just wondering how much the strategy is likely to change between now and consultation, when I read that it's now in compilation phase where work undertaken by community panels tag the committee and partner councils is being compiled into a proposed strategy.
Yep.
I mean, we've just spoken about having a draft strategy, which has been established over 9 years. So how much more work before we actually get a strategy for proposal?
Yeah. So really the response is, we as the project team recognise this huge amount of community effort that's gone into creating the pathways, and in terms of recommendations from staff to the Hawke's Bay Regional Council, in terms of the pathways, in my view, it will very much look like the pathways being developed, recognising that community input. I can't comment on the processes that the Hawke's Bay Regional Council will go through to consider, question and have due process around adopting the strategy, so we need to sort of leave that space for councillors. But certainly in terms of the TAG team, there is a recognition of the effort gone in. The key component of the strategy is how it's funded, so that's really the bit that we're now compiling in terms of the pathways that they're effectively brought in as the basis of the strategy to present to the Hawke's Bay Regional Council. And then it's all the other fine-tuning of those other work streams to understand consentability, how much do we need to do from an environmental monitoring perspective before consenting, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's really the compilation, which is all the other details apart from those high-level pathways for each cell. And, of course, the timing, the triggers, is all the stuff that needs to be packaged together.
Councillor Harding?
Thank you, Chair. Look, I just wanted to pick up on Chris Dolly's earlier comments about the work that's gone on with the community in behind this, and the quality of that work. As a new councillor coming into this process, it's been a truly impressive process to delve into, and that confidence that it gives me as a councillor and my fellow councillors in that process, and it's worth in continuing to prioritise it in the face of everything else that we now have to deal with post-cyclone is the reason why we are hopeful that this will be a fruitful process. And from a regional council point of view, while we're committed, we're continuing to commit resources to it. That is a difficult choice in a post-cyclone context, but this is such a good process in terms of its both the local implementation, but also where it sits in our national, coastal response and development of a national approach to that it is very worthy of giving the maximum support we can to it.
Thank you. Tanya Hopman, you've got your yellow hand up.
I've got my brown hand up now. But hey, thank you for that overview. I mean, I think I have been on this committee since its inception, and it's been a long time with a lot of excellent work done. And I do want to just compliment the hbcoast.co.nz website, which is an excellent website full of lots of good information about the work that's been done. I was just having a little flick around on it to see if there was a timeline of what's being done, and that's readily accessible in the menu. And I think that would, if it's not there prominently, I think it would be good to put it there, because the reason I'm raising this is most of you will know that Tangoio was really badly hit as part of the cyclone. Our marae was pretty much wiped out, and whānau have lost homes in Tangoio Valley. But we've been talking about flood mitigation for over 13 years. And Simon, for example, has been involved in some of that work. And people will know that these things don't happen in a hurry. There's a lot to be discussed, researched, and to try and bring a community along that's very attached to a place, and to contemplate whether they stay in that place or mitigate in that place or remove themselves from that place. But what I have noticed is that in spite of all that work and some very good comms and lots of hui and lots of research and sharing of information, I'm finding that now that we've had the cyclone, it's almost like there's a whole range of people who've forgotten where we've been, and there's some new people who are interested, who haven't been party to the conversations before, who are raising the same questions and putting forward suggestions that we've traversed before. So what I'm sharing is that timelines are really good for showing people in a snapshot that actually there's been a lot of work done. That's the first thing. And secondly, maybe highlighting key decisions that were made in the timeline. What I'm just sharing is that I think we've got an excellent website. It's got great information. I'm just wondering if there is on there a timeline, so that for the Johnny-come-latelys who are picking it up, or the ones who have now become interested in the work that's been done, that they can actually see that there has been a long process with lots of good information at a glance. That was just my suggestion, because I don't have the answer, but I'm dealing with that on a smaller scale with my own whānau, and just, yeah, that was my thing, because the summary that's been done today is really helpful for those that are coming onto the committee and aren't familiar with the work that's been done. Maybe that needs to be summarised somewhere on the website. I know there's lots of information on the website, but is there a summary, 300 words of what's been achieved, and maybe a timeline? So just wanted to suggest that.
Thank you for that. And the only one who took notes was who wrote something down is Simon, so I'll let him reply.
Kia ora, Tanya, Simon here. It's a great suggestion. I can't think if we've got something sort of visually, easily kind of digestible that might portray that. So I think we should definitely do that. So I'll take an action away to prepare something with the team here and get it up. Thanks for the idea.
Excellent, fantastic, thank you. Okay, so any further comments? If there's not, then I'll ask for a move that the Clifton to Tangoio Coastal Hazards Joint Strategy Joint Committee receives notes the overview of the Clifton to Tangoio Coastal Hazard Strategy Staff Report. Have we got a mover?
Happy to move.
Yep, thank you.
It's a very comprehensive summary of where we've been and what we've done and the progress, so well done to the writers.
Great, thank you. And I've got a seconder from Tanya Hobman. Okay, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Ayes have it. Thank you. Then we go to the next item, which is item 8, project manager's update. That only can be you, Simon.
That's me, thank you, Chair. So this is, I guess, my regular reporting template back to the Joint Committee. It gives a status report on 10 different metrics of the project and how it's tracking along. Green's on track, yellow under stress, and red is the key risk. Where there has been a change since the last report, that's shown as red underlined text with a bit of an arrow showing which way it's moved. You'll see in this report there are 3 key metrics that have moved to the right, which is not good. That being project timeline, funding governance, and the LGA consultation process. Really all related to that paper we had earlier on the timeframes to get this thing notified for public comment, all related to cyclone recovery. Other metrics are tracking well though. In terms of project budget, we're well underspent for this year given the slower progress. So that's fine in a sense. Everything else is progressing reasonably well. We did have a bit of a pause in work in the immediate aftermath of the cyclone just to sort of regroup and see where funds should be spent. But we've since restarted some of the consultants working on, for example, the Mātauranga Māori work stream, coastal ecology and funding. So that's really the summary of my report, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Also in light of, once again, we had a time that everything was blamed on COVID. Now, of course, we're going to blame everything on Cyclone Gabrielle. And I'm going to use that not to our interest, but it's just a reality, is that we had Pierre Monro as an interim chief executive for a little while, who leads the engagement with Mana Whenua and his team, and they were really sidetracked. They've done a lot of work in the community, and it hasn't been easy, as Tanya Hopman just explained, with a lot of communities being affected, and their assistance was needed there. Hopefully we'll get that back on track again, that we actually get that engagement back up to where it should be in green, hopefully. It was never really great. It was never been in green, really, but we really should focus on that in the next stage, I would say. Okay, any other comments? Otherwise, I'll ask for a mover that the Clifton to Tangoio Coastal Hazard Strategy Joint Committee receives and notes the project manager's update. Councillor Brown, and sorry, Councillor Simpson, I'm not allowed to take your seat. Councillor Redstone. Got to play by the rules, apparently. Okay, those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Ayes have it. Thank you. Then we go to item number 9, communication and engagement update. Simon?
Thank you, Chair. So this is again a sort of a regular report, a bit odd this time, and that there's been a bit of a long gap since we last met with the committee. So some of these updates are from late last year. The 2 main updates, I guess, are on the drop-in sessions we had actually earlier this year at Haumuana and late last year at West Shore. This is all pre-cyclone. The idea with that was to reconnect with the community on sort of where we're up to, talk about some key strategy development sort of questions. There's a couple of photos showing what it looked like. We had some sort of large posters providing a whole bunch of information on the project. The meetings were, I think, pretty well attended. We had 50-ish people attend at Haumuana, I think perhaps slightly less at West Shore. But in the round, my own reflection, I suppose, is a pretty well attended and pretty engaged community in relation to this work. Despite there being, I guess, a couple of years where the strategy has been quite internally focused. So back then the idea was to socialise things again, reconnect, and I guess prepare for the August notification. Then the cyclone came along and things changed, as we obviously know. There have been a couple of meetings that the TAG group for this project have attended relevant to coastal hazards post-cyclone, and those are noted here. One at Tiawonga and one at West Shore. I was at the Tiawonga meeting. the key focus there, and others may wish to add who were there, really was around a large concern about increased erosion at Tiawonga, and particularly the reduction or loss of the crest there, and exposure to the next high tide or storm event was a key topic of discussion. There is some ideas coming from Tiawonga around forming a working group, perhaps engaging with the councils around some emergency response to reduce that risk in the short term. That's ongoing, particularly with Hastings District Council. I wasn't at the West Shore one, but Chris, do you want to note anything about that discussion?
Yeah, look, West Shore was a really well-attended public meeting. I think they had almost 200 people in the room, which was fantastic. Look, I really just gave them an update on a number of things. One was some repairs to the shingle crest there post-cyclone, where we were at in terms of that. There was a house that had flooding from the sea in that location during the cyclone, and updated them on the status of the strategy. Really, the discussion we've had today about potential for deferral of that major consultation piece, and I also spoke to them about the reconsenting of the gravel renourishment on West Shore as well. So they were the three sort of topics updated. There's a fair amount of feedback from the group. Look, one of the key things is certainly people accessing the beach. A number of people commenting that the shingle barrier is difficult to navigate, and of course just after the cyclone a lot of the timber stairs, I think there's a couple of timber stairwells there, had been smashed, and so they need to be put back. So that's just some of the sort of feedback from the community, but yeah, there's a whole raft of topics, and Councillor Price, you're also there. I don't know if you've got any comments.
Just, I look at this feedback from general questions. Do we answer those? And what Chris talked about is about steps down the getting down to the beach is quite, keeps coming back to me. So I'm just wondering whether there's a path where these people are answered. It can be done through the West Shore Residents Association, and are they going to be fixed?
Yeah. So they will be fixed. So we'll work with Napier on that one.
Yeah.
With Russell. So that's a priority. In terms of these other comments from the workshops, I guess we're taking those on board. We haven't really considered how we could answer where there's a question, but there's certainly lots of comments we're taking on board. So we're not intending on individually answering every sticky note from those workshops. There's more of an input. But if people would like to know, or they've left their details on those sticky notes, we'll certainly have those conversations.
I've got to say you did a very good job that night. It was, you got semi-attacked a little bit in some areas and answered well.
Part of the job. So.
Chair, just in terms of the Tiawonga meeting, I wonder if either you or Councillor Redstone have that discussion there.
I'll leave it to the local.
Thank you. I was just going to actually update you a little bit on, there's been a new committee formed coming out of that meeting, and it is about flood protection as well, but also about the crest and inundation. So Keith Newman, who's the WOW chair, is on that committee. There's 4 people representing the community: Morris Smith, Liz Reid, Marcel Van Hoofdonk. So they're down the end of Grange Road that flooded badly. So yeah, there is a committee put together to work towards solutions generally.
And that was a well-attended meeting.
Very well.
It was a bit hard to chair because we went into a couple of rabbit holes that we need to pull them back in, but that generally happens when you have a public meeting when the anxiety runs a little bit high. But that was really good, and it's once again it's good to see that we actually have community turning up to these meetings, having these discussions. Not that it was our meeting, that was actually the community's meeting, but it's good that the community really has got some input in that, which is really important. Because the more community input we have, the better we can actually come up to the desired effect. Councillor Brown and then Councillor Harding.
Just wondering if we've got any comms that are going out sort of almost as a result of today's meeting. So I suppose we've decided to delay our communications, and we've got quite an engaged community that would be expecting those. And as Tanya made the point, we've got some new people who are interested who might benefit from a background, a sort of update, and just wondering those questions could be almost a basis as to how we could form or pull together some information. So just wondering, have we got anything sort of planned for now as a result of today's discussion?
So through the chair, a couple of things. One is that we often do a newsletter post joint committee meetings. So that was planned to say sort of here's the update on where things are up to. So that's in the works. And secondly, with the support of HPRC comms team, we do have a new comms and engagement plan being developed sort of as we speak, with a view to guiding comms over the next 12 months really. So it'll be two immediate yes update and followed by the more strategic plan which you'll receive at the next joint committee meeting.
Brilliant.
And it would be good in that, and just to follow up on that, sorry, Councillor Harding, that we, after today's decision to actually delay consultation due to, and explain that, but that the actual work will still continue as Chris made very clear, so that the community understands that we're not actually holding our breath, we're actually going to carry on, it's just the communication. Councillor Harding, and then I'll go to Councillor Hobman.
Thank you, Chair, and that's a nice segue to the points that I wanted to make. Para 19 and 20 of the paper talk about the updating, or the process of updating a communications plan and key objectives in that, including effective engagement with the tangata whenua, coastal and inland ratepayers, etc. So, and I wanted to specifically talk about engagement with tangata whenua, because we've heard a couple of times, or we've heard in the previous report, the project manager's report, that there's a weakness there. I have gained the impression this morning that that's a reasonably long-standing weakness in terms of engagement, and that's possibly more about priorities than ultimately the importance of the issues. I think we have an opportunity over the next 12 months to try and put that right, and also I'm conscious that if tangata whenua have particular concerns about some of the solutions, for example, nourishment, then there's some really good work that we can be doing around those issues now. So my request was going to be, and I'm just wondering whether, and playing with the drafting of a resolution that just reflects that, the wish of the committee, if they so want to go down that route, to particularly instruct to give a bit more focus to that tangata whenua engagement over the next 12 months to try and fill that void.
Okay, and I can hear where you're coming from, and I'm not going to stand in the way of that. It is also, if you hear it from tangata whenua, that actually, and if you've been around the council table long enough, they're actually, for them to be resourced to actually engage with us is also an issue as well. But maybe Tanya has got her hand up. Maybe she can actually comment on that at the same time, as well as either making another comment or a question that you already had. Tanya, the floor is yours.
Yes, Alison was just reminding me that my hand was up, but that's probably good timing. Sorry for not putting it down. I think that there have been some significant attempts to engage tangata whenua over many years. There have been some successes, but overall there has probably been challenges with engagement to the wider tangata whenua community. I think when we've had the panels and the work that they were doing, that there was good engagement during that, and that was task focused. I don't think it's because, I do agree with the last speaker, it is not because tangata whenua are not interested, it is prioritising, and certainly with cyclone matters now, obviously that, there's a whole lot of things that are important that are now going down the list because recovery is priority for many of us. But yeah, always open to more opportunities to get information out there. But I do credit our comms team and staff who have actually followed through with suggestions and tried to do that. I do think a couple of options, and I can't recall when they were last briefed, but I do think the tangata whenua meetings, the tangata whenua representatives of the Regional Planning Committee, which covers all the PSGEs in Hawke's Bay, as well as the Māori committees of each of the councils, are a way to get information into, making sure that information is still being passed on, and also that there's that ongoing awareness of what's happening. So I do think those particular representatives who are already in council committees, they're good ones to keep targeting to make sure that, at least at a governance level, that this is still on the radar for those groups. And some of them, obviously it's not, our area is confined, it's not the whole of Hawke's Bay, but I think understanding those issues is important. And for many of the groups that live like to the north of Hawke's Bay, ourselves, Ngāti Hiniuru, Maungaharuru, Tangiti Trust, Pāhuera, Wairua even, a lot of those groups have substantial proportions of their population in Napier and Hastings. So, they need to be aware of these issues. They may not be tangata whenua there, but they are still ratepayers. And, in terms of keeping our Māori communities up to speed with some of the issues around climate change that are ongoing, I think is really important. So, yeah, my suggestion would be maybe to think when it would be timely to do a presentation to the tangata whenua members of the Regional Planning Committee, likewise with the Māori Committee for each of the councils, just so it's at that level of that governance level, there's still information being put in front of them.
Thank you for that comment, and there's possibly a suggestion that we can take on board. Okay, that's good. Are you happy?
Look, I saw our project manager furiously writing down notes there, and I think we've landed in a really good place. So thanks, Tanya, for that, and thanks everyone. I think that's helpful.
Without you having to muck around with our papers once again. Fair enough. Okay. Any other comments, questions? Otherwise, I'm going to put the recommendation that we accept this communication or engagement update from.
Yes, I move.
Councillor Harding, have we got a seconder for that? Councillor Corbyn, all in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, we'll go to item number 10, current coastal projects update. Simon?
I'm happy to introduce this topic, Chair. So this is our standard report, just updating members of some of our current projects. We have members from each council here to comment and help answer some questions. So really take it as read, and happy to answer any questions on any of the projects here, or potentially projects that aren't on the list.
Councillor Redstone.
Just going back to the Te Awanga meeting recently, there were some comments made by a former district councillor about the Marae-Tautra River impacting on the car park there. And in the good old days, somebody used to have a tractor down there and they used to cut the mouth back out straight, but it's been coming along the beachfront, which has actually caused or really exacerbated the erosion there. So that's not actually in the paper, but it is a really important detail, because every time that happens, we lose quite a bit of the car park there, and the danger is that the sea comes into the lagoon and then onto the road and currently into houses. So I don't know if that's been looked at, Chris, and I'm looking at you.
Yeah. So I can comment in terms of Marae-Tautra River mouth is one of 19 managed river mouths in Hawke's Bay, and we actively have staff there all of the time, looking at the current situation and particularly preparing for any events. But I think given that there is interest from the community group, it's probably worth keeping an eye on what's happening in that space. So we're happy to put a bit of a prompt here, even if it's the group met and whatever. It just keeps people, it just keeps the focus on developments in that area. So I know staff, we had regional council staff at that meeting, and I know they're working or looking at potential solutions and working with Hastings as well. So I think putting it on the list is probably a good idea, that we don't lose sight of what's happening there and any decisions.
Thank you, and I think it's a good opportunity for the community to have input into what's actually happening to you, just to save that capacity of staff.
And best that's what the community meeting actually put up as a resolution, that actually the committee would actually deal on their behalf, rather than everybody writing in and sending love letters to Chris. That the community actually will, that committee actually will engage, and I think it would be really good as an outcome today that we actually set up a meeting, and you with staff and go from there. And don't mind to be involved. That's good. Make sure it's a sunny day. Okay. Any other questions regarding any of the particular area that may cover where you have some interest?
Thank you, Chair. Looking at these current projects, coastal projects, and there's a couple more. We've just talked about Te Wonga there, and the delay in, or the deferral of adopting a coastal strategy. The cost of the consenting process is, for these smaller projects, is quite significant. And I'm just wondering if it's possible to have the consent application for these stopgap projects aligned with what the longer term strategy would be, so we're not doubling up or increasing the cost of consenting along the coast.
Chris?
So look, I think that's a good comment. Consenting costs are considerable. We all know that they're running at, at least 20% of the cost of any intervention. A lot of that's driven by a wide range of interests at the coast and the coastal margins and coastal processes, and having to provide feedback to a raft of partners and stakeholders, NGOs, etc. And it's an area of, I think, great interest around coastal processes and that margin. So I think it's a valid point. I think it's something TAG can take a look at to see what can be done in that area. And so I think we'll take that on board as a challenge and see what can be done, particularly where the production of common use technical information that can be used more than once, for example, is a good way of achieving that. So I think we'll take that challenge on board. I do think it is a big challenge, but we'll certainly happy to take it on board as a TAG group to see, we all want to save money, we all want to be efficient, but we do need to navigate properly those consenting processes, and to be underprepared for those consenting processes can actually push timelines out as well. So we'll take that on board.
Thank you, that's a very good comment. And I'll just make a quick comment. If and when the time arises that HBRC will actually become the lead and take this work on, rest assured, even the consenting team won't be actually friendly to us as a Hawkesbury Region Council. It's the process you have to go through, and even if we have to give our own council a consent, it still comes at a cost in the process we have to go through. So it won't make it any cheaper, and at 20%, it's almost uncomprehensible. But anyway, we won't go there. Councillor Price.
Just a quick question on the renourishment of West Shore Beach.
Yep.
In that consent, do we say what we're going to use for the renourishment, and is it the same as what we've been using?
Yeah. So I think on that, the reconsenting is a great opportunity to take advice from the community about their preferences, and there's always a balance between, I think, aesthetics and performance. So what I'm signalling there, we'll take that on board. I know at the meeting, the community meeting, there was a wide raft of views around what materials should be used, etc. So that will all be looked at again in detail. We'll have the experts look at that, plus talk to the community. And the good thing is we've allowed plenty of time for that consenting process. So it expires in 2027. So we've got time to work through all of those issues and get something that works and the community's satisfied with as well.
I think that is a good idea, because everybody thinks they're engineers when it comes to opinions on something like that.
Absolutely. Councillor Redstone.
Thank you. Something that's not on the list, but is probably really important, and we have got a consent to do it, and that's to raise the crest at Honwana in particular.
Yep.
It's the lowest I've ever seen it in 40 years, particularly around the lagoons.
Yep.
So, and there's quite a bit of material on the back of the crest which would allow for us to have it scraped back up again. So that's just to note.
I think that sits with Hastings District Council, hold that consent. So we'll work with Mark to get some updates and how we can all work together to make that happen as easily as possible. So I don't think it's fair to ask Mark that now, but we'll certainly add it to the list.
I have met with Ben Hunt, and he's had a look at it from Hastings District
Yep.
Council, because, yeah, my concern is if we're not proactive rather than reactive, we might have a much bigger issue
Yeah, absolutely.
there. Thank you, Chris. Oh,
Mark is staying put, so we won't ask him. Okay. Councillor Brown.
A question on the Hawke's Bay Climate Action Joint Committee. It's possibly able to be answered by the members here. I was just wondering what sort of representation from this group we have on that joint committee?
We'll go.
Looking to your left as well.
And you are as well, and I'm on it as well, so that,
there you go.
okay, so we've got one from each council here.
Yeah, so we didn't necessarily have joint committee representation because we've got councillors covering it anyway, so sounds good. Sounds pretty good.
Thanks.
Good question. Any other comments? Otherwise, we'll accept the current coastal projects update. Mover, Councillor Redstone, and second, Councillor Harding. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Ayes have it. So, follow-ups, action on the action status. Is that you, Simon? Or have I got it wrong again?
I'll comment. Thank you, Chair. We've obviously put comments in there, so we'll take it as read. And some of those actions have been actioned out today, but happy to answer any queries on those actions if need be.
Well, once again, it proves that actually we are working and work hasn't stopped due to the cyclone. Any questions, remarks? Okay, well, in that case, we'll move, we accept the actions, the follow-up of action status of staff report. I've got a mover, Councillor Dixon, seconder, Councillor Brown. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
No, ayes have it. Okay. Well, that concludes the work that we had to do today. It's been relatively quick, we normally do, and I think that's really got to do with the two gentlemen on my left being very well prepared, and the work that we generally do as a community involvement as well. It's definitely a committee where we do get out and we are often giving updates to the community, as Simon indicated. As we all know, we should have had a joint committee meeting on the 17th of February, but that just wasn't possible. I was up to my neck in silt. Still up to my neck in silt, but it doesn't matter. It's a bit drier now than it was then. But I would say as a joint committee, we won't let up. We've actually increased our meeting template from what we did earlier on, about two years ago, because we feel that this work is important and we can also continue to inform our community, and you as joint committee members can bring your concerns forward as well. But at any time, as committee members, do contact me or Simon, for that matter, if you have anything that you would like to bring forward. Don't wait until the next meeting. Okay, so we come to the end of the meeting, but I'm asking...
I do have a question. When is the next meeting? It's in the diary as 23rd of June.
Yes.
So that's it?
That's when it will be, unless you otherwise notified. But it's already, the plan is already set for the rest of the year.
23rd of June.
Yep. Good.
The 11th of August and 22nd of September.
Just in case you ask next joint committee, that's when it will be. Okay, fantastic. Any other closing comments?
Just worth noting for the joint committee members that we do have a workshop, Tonkin and Taylor.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And what we'll do, because we have finished a little bit earlier, is we'll just get into contact with Tonkin and Taylor.
See if we bring them on.
See if we can just bring them forward. They were scheduled for 12:30.
So we've got lunches in here and we've got that in between. Yeah.
You could
We can
network.
try and lunch the, yeah. Could be a bit earlier.
Okay. That's all good? We all aware of that? Okay, then we'll close the meeting, and once again I'll ask Tanya. we're going to ask you to close with a karakia, if that's possible. We asked Mark Clues to start. Is it okay with you to close us with a karakia?
Are we all doing the workshop?
Yeah.
Yes, as joint
Because
members, we are. Yes.
Yeah, so we would normally close after
Okay.
a workshop, so, yeah.
I'm quite happy with that. Us as a regional council, we actually do break it up, and we do have karakia
Oh, do you?
one to the other, but we'll go with your wise wisdom. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
No worries.
The meeting is closed.